The truth has to be told. And we're down to a point in America where the truth is being canceled. It's being attacked like never before. And if you don't love the truth, then you don't love God. Okay? If you don't love the truth, you don't love God, because God is the truth.
Amen.
And let's talk about truth for a minute. The Bible describes truth as a sword. And a sword is sharp. It will cut you. It will hurt you.
That was Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene at what I can only assume is the worst open mic comedy night in America. Greene was actually visiting a local Idaho Republican party, and her message was clear. God is the only truth, and only Republicans know what God really means.
And the problem with these people in Washington is the truth hurts them. And that's why we have to keep speaking it. Because it's not our fault that the truth hurts them. It's their fault that the truth hurts them. Because they have turned their back on the truth. And they've turned their back on God.
If this is starting to sound like dehumanizing the opposition in order to excuse violence against them, you aren't far off. Greene is no stranger to mixing calls for violence against the left with a healthy dose of far-right Christian fundamentalism. And Greene even had specific targets in mind: reproductive rights and same-sex marriage.
And the rest of us sit inside the House of Representatives in the House chamber where it says, "In God we trust." Amen. On the wall. Amen. The Democrats have voted, they have passed bills 2 times in past Congress to murder babies up until the day of birth. Murder babies up until the day of birth. Every Democrat voted for that except one 2 times. They passed a bill to make it a federal law to protect gay marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's between God and a man and a woman.
Well, let's break down why that's wrong. First off, despite the far-right's twisted fantasies, absolutely no one in Congress is cheerleading a bill that would allow abortion up until the moment of birth. This is a popular Republican lie, but it's a lie just the same. In fact, in legislation like the Women's Health Protection Act of 2022, Congress actually specifically gave states power to restrict healthcare providers from offering abortions after fetal viability. And remember, there's a big difference between fetal viability and the moment of birth. And Margie's coming for the gays, too. Despite Republicans joining Democrats to pass federal marriage protections just last year. If you didn't know Republicans were about to make 2024 entirely about social issues, Marjorie's here to remind you. But Marjorie isn't done. Sure, most of us winced as Greene tried to reinvent herself as a very stable, very serious mainstream Republican leader. But that veneer of decency didn't last very long. And as you'll see here, Greene is already back to trying to convince you that the libs are stealing all the elections.
You know, I absolutely love President Trump, and Russ, what a great honor you got to be in Congress when he was our president. But you had Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. We both had her last Congress as well. But I ran for office just convinced that, guess what? That he would be in the White House when I got to Congress. Well, then a little something happened called stolen elections. Yeah, and I have no problem saying that, even though, you're shamed, you can't say stolen elections.
If you had less than a month as your bet for how long it would take Margie to revert completely back to herself, congratulations, I guess. And Marjorie's been really busy just over the past week, because when she wasn't attacking abortion rights or gay marriage, she also had some really well-thought-out ideas on race to share.
Generations of Black and Hispanic men, do you want to know what holds them down? Gangs. Being in gangs and dealing drugs is what holds them down. The lack of education is what holds them down. That's not a white person thing, but gangs control them. They tell the young men in their communities, don't go to school. Don't you move out of this project. Don't you move out of this community. You join this gang.
Listen, folks, this is why I begged you not to show Marjorie Taylor Greene The Wire. I told you she was going to think it was a documentary and take the exact wrong lessons from it. Though, notice how effortlessly Greene writes off gang violence as not a white people thing, when according to the Federal Office of Justice Programs, the most violent gang in America is the whites-only Aryan Brotherhood. Huh. Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to make really sure you don't think she's like some kind of racist or something, because here she is attempting to clarify her statement, if you can call it that, by pointing out that, hey, she knows a lot of lazy white people too.
I know a ton of white people that are as lazy and sorry and probably worse than black people I know.
I'll tell you, after all of that, the absolute best Greene can do is to say that maybe, probably, there might be some white people out there as bad as black people she knows. It's mind-blowing to think that Greene, who just 2 weeks ago was being hailed for having grown up, is tossing off one-liners like that in her free time. Good grief. One thing you won't hear in any of Greene's ranting, any talk about how to actually govern the country. That's because governing takes work, and Republicans under Kevin McCarthy are still fighting internally about who really runs the show on Capitol Hill. With no actual work to do, ghouls like Marjorie Taylor Greene are reverting to what they do best, riling up their grassroots donors with more hate and division. Unfortunately for America, this is no laughing matter. With a right-wing Supreme Court at their service and a contentious presidential race ahead, Republicans have a huge incentive to write their paranoid vision of America into law and defend it before the courts. Marjorie Taylor Greene may be a lunatic. She's also running the asylum. If you made it to the end, thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like and consider subscribing. And leave a comment below so you can let me know what I should cover next.